On May 4, 1983, around 10:30 in the morning, the Atlantic Ocean was alive with activity. The United States Navy was conducting Ocean Safari 83, one of the largest naval exercises of the decade. At the center of this massive operation sat the USS America, a Kitty Hawk-class aircraft carrier. This wasn't just any warship. It was over 320 meters long, displacing more than 60,000 tons, carrying 80 aircraft, with a crew of 5,000 sailors. The carrier was surrounded by an impressive defensive network. Ticonderoga-class cruisers with advanced Aegis combat systems, multiple destroyers and frigates forming protective rings. F-14 Tomcat fighters patrolling overhead, armed with missiles that could hit targets 150 kilometers away. E-2 Hawkeye early warning aircraft with radar scanning 300 miles in every direction. Submarines beneath the surface listening for threats. This was American military power at its peak, the most advanced defense technology in the world. A network designed to be absolutely impenetrable, but in the next few minutes, something would happen that would shock every officer present. A single British aircraft was approaching, and what it was about to do seemed completely impossible. The aircraft flew directly over the USS America and dropped a practice bomb on the carrier deck. All without being detected. If this had been real combat, the carrier would have been destroyed. The billion-dollar American defense system had failed completely. If you want to know how this happened, how a 25-year-old British aircraft humiliated the world's most powerful navy, and what this reveals about the limits of even the most advanced technology, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because what I'm about to share will show you that sometimes, brilliant tactics and exceptional skill can defeat billion-dollar defense systems. How could this happen? How could a single aircraft penetrate layers of radar, fighter jets, and missile systems without being detected? The answer lies in understanding a fundamental weakness that even today's technology cannot overcome. This incident became known as the Buccaneer Run, and it changed naval warfare forever. To understand what happened that day, we need to go back to the 1950s. Back to the height of the Cold War, when Britain faced a serious problem. The Soviet Union was building one of the most powerful navies in history. Modern aircraft carriers, advanced destroyers, nuclear submarines, all equipped with sophisticated radar, surface-to-air missiles, and fighter protection. If Britain needed to attack Soviet ships, how could they do it? A conventional high-altitude bombing attack would be suicide. Soviet radar would detect aircraft from over 100 miles away. Missiles would launch. Fighters would intercept. The attacking planes would be destroyed long before reaching their targets. British military planners developed a radical solution. Build an aircraft that could fly so low it would become invisible to radar. Not through stealth technology, but by exploiting a fundamental limitation of physics itself. The curvature of the Earth. It was brilliant, but incredibly dangerous. Flying at extreme low altitude at high speed is one of the most hazardous things a pilot can do. One mistake means instant death, no time to recover, no altitude to spare, just a fatal crash into the water. In 1955, Britain issued requirements for a new carrier-based strike aircraft. Several companies competed. Blackburn Aircraft won. In April 1958, the first Blackburn Buccaneer prototype flew. Test pilots were amazed. This aircraft was purpose-built for one mission, flying fast and low over water to attack enemy ships. Let me explain what made it extraordinary. Normal passenger jets cruise at 35,000 to 40,000 feet. The Buccaneer was designed to fly at just 200 feet above the ocean, only 60 meters. About the height of a 20-story building. Imagine an aircraft weighing several tons, traveling over 900 kilometers per hour, maintaining this height for hours. At 200 feet, pilots could see individual waves, ocean spray. Seabirds flew higher than the aircraft. This was wave-top flying at its most extreme. But why does flying this low make you invisible? Understanding this requires understanding how radar works. Radar transmits radio waves that bounce off objects and return to a receiver. By measuring the return time, radar calculates distance. Simple, but radar has a fundamental weakness no technology can overcome. The Earth's curvature. Stand on a beach. You can see nearby ships, but ships beyond the horizon are invisible, hidden by the planet's curve. Your line of sight is blocked. Radar faces the same limitation. Radar waves travel in straight lines. They cannot bend around Earth. If an aircraft flies below the radar horizon, radar waves pass over it. The radar is blind. This is the radar horizon effect, a limitation of physics itself. There's another problem. Sea clutter. The ocean isn't smooth. Constantly moving waves, foam, and spray all reflect radar signals. On radar screens, this creates thousands of confusing returns. Imagine you're staring at a screen showing thousands of blips from ocean waves. Somewhere in that mess might be one blip from a low-flying aircraft. How do you tell the difference? It's like finding one specific grain of sand on a beach. Nearly impossible. The Buccaneer was designed to exploit both weaknesses. But flying at 200 feet at 900 km/h isn't just about avoiding radar. It's physically brutal. At low altitude, air is much denser. This creates tremendous turbulence, violent buffeting, constant shaking. Most aircraft can't handle this stress. Their structures would fail, wings would crack. But the Buccaneer was different. British engineers built an aircraft specifically for this punishment. Incredibly strong wings, robust fuselage. The Buccaneer could maintain low-level flight for hours without problems. The aircraft also featured revolutionary technology for its era. This was the late 1950s. No GPS, no satellite navigation. Pilots used maps, compasses, and radio beacons. But the Buccaneer had terrain-following radar, TFR. Cutting-edge technology. The TFR continuously scanned the surface ahead, measured exact distance, and automatically adjusted altitude to maintain constant height. Revolutionary. Pilots didn't need to manually control altitude constantly, which would be exhausting on long missions. The TFR did it automatically, keeping the aircraft at exactly 200 feet. This let pilots focus on navigation, watching for threats, and planning attacks. The Buccaneer also had impressive range. Over 1,000 kilometers to target, complete the mission, and 1,000 kilometers back. Total mission distance of 2,000 kilometers while carrying heavy weapons at low altitude. Very few aircraft of that era could do this. The Buccaneer entered Royal Navy service in 1962s, operating from carriers like HMS Ark Royal and HMS Eagle. In 1969, the RAF adopted it as a bomber replacement. Throughout the 1970s and early 1980s, Buccaneer squadrons trained relentlessly. Their mission, attacking Soviet naval vessels. They'd fly from British or German bases, cross the North Sea at 200 feet, and practice simulated attacks. The Soviets knew about the Buccaneer. They respected it as a serious threat that would be extremely difficult to defend against. Now, May 4, 1983. Ocean Safari 83 involved forces from the United States, Britain, Canada, Norway, and other NATO countries. The goal: test air defense capabilities of an American carrier battle group in the North Atlantic, find any weaknesses, practice coordination. The Americans deployed one of their most powerful carrier groups around USS America. The defensive setup was formidable. Multiple ships formed protective rings. Each had radar systems networked through data links. If one ship detected a threat, every ship knew instantly. The outermost layer. F-14 Tomcat fighters on combat air patrol. The F-14 was one of the world's most advanced aircraft in 1983. Its AWG-9 radar could track 24 targets simultaneously and engage 6 at once. Armed with AIM-54 Phoenix missiles with range over 150 kilometers. These fighters patrolled at various altitudes and distances, ready to intercept anything incoming. Second layer, E-2 Hawkeye early warning aircraft, recognizable by its large rotating radar dome. This radar detected aircraft at ranges exceeding 300 miles, nearly 500 kilometers. The E-2 served as a flying command center, coordinating all defensive elements, a god's eye view of everything within hundreds of miles. Nothing was supposed to escape detection. Third layer, the ships themselves. Ticonderoga-class cruisers with Aegis combat systems, one of the most advanced air defense systems ever built. Aegis used phased array radars tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously. Each ship carried various missiles, long range for distant targets, medium range for closer threats, and phalanx CIWS close, in weapons, rapid-fire cannons as last-ditch defense. Below the surface, submarines used sonar listening for underwater threats. This was the network the British would penetrate. Impossible on paper. But RAF pilots knew something crucial. All these systems were optimized for threats at medium to high altitudes. That's where attacks were expected. High-altitude bombers, cruise missiles at medium altitude, fighter aircraft at various levels. The entire doctrine was built around these assumptions. What wasn't optimized? Detecting a single aircraft at 200 feet above water. Radar operators were trained to look higher. Fighters patrolled where they expected enemy aircraft. The E-2's radar focused on threats from farther away at conventional profiles. Nobody expected an attack at wave-top height. The British Buccaneer took off from RAF Lossiemouth on Scotland's northern coast. The mission was planned in meticulous detail over several days. The crew studied American patrol patterns, calculated radar coverage zones, analyzed weather and ocean conditions, planned their route to minimize detection. As soon as the Buccaneer reached the Atlantic, it dropped to 200 feet. The crew activated terrain-following radar, Autopilot engaged in TFR mode. At this height, the experience was intense. Ocean surface rushing past below, spray from individual waves visible. The aircraft moving so fast the ocean became a blur. Any seabirds in the area were flying higher than this multi-ton aircraft screaming past at 900 kilometers per hour. The Buccaneer maintained this altitude for several hundred miles. Flying at this level over open ocean requires absolute concentration. No landmarks, no visual references, no depth perception. Just endless water. The horizon blends with the sea. Very easy to become disoriented. Pilots relied completely on instruments. Their inertial navigation system tracked position using gyroscopes and accelerometers. They cross-referenced with radio navigation aids when possible, but carefully. Any electronic transmissions could be detected by American ships. The flight took several hours. Maintaining this concentration for so long is mentally exhausting, but the Buccaneer's engines ran smoothly. Systems performed perfectly. The TFR kept the aircraft at exactly the right height. Everything went according to plan. As they approached the carrier group's area, the crew made a critical decision. They switched off their own radar, went electronically silent. Any radar transmission could be detected by American electronic warfare systems. Ships carry sensitive receivers picking up radar signals from hundreds of kilometers away. So the crew proceeded using only passive sensors, their navigation system, and intelligence about where the carrier would be. And here's what's remarkable. As the Buccaneer closed in, absolutely nothing happened on the American side. Ship radar didn't detect the approaching aircraft. Fighters on patrol saw nothing. The E-2 Hawkeye with its powerful radar completely missed it. Aegis cruisers' advanced systems showed nothing but sea clutter. Submarines detected nothing because the Buccaneer was flying through air, not sailing on water. The Buccaneer flew through the outer perimeter undetected. Mile after mile. Getting closer to the carrier, pilots could now see American ships with their own eyes. Outer destroyers and frigates. Inner cruisers. Finally, the target. USS America. Over 60,000 tons of naval power, completely unaware. The Buccaneer crew executed their final run perfectly. Maintained 200 feet until the last moment. Then, just miles from the carrier, pulled up slightly, just enough to clear the carrier's island superstructure. The sudden appearance triggered alarms. But too late. The Buccaneer flew directly over USS America, right over the flight deck. The crew released a practice flash bomb. Bright flash. Large smoke cloud. On the carrier deck, sailors looked up in shock. Where did this come from? Nobody had tracked it. No warnings issued. It simply appeared overhead. In real combat, that would have been an actual weapon. Anti-ship missile. Bomb. The carrier would have been hit. Possibly destroyed. Thousands could have died. The most powerful aircraft carrier in the world, protected by the most advanced defenses, had just been shown vulnerable. The reaction was immediate. Exercise controllers demanded explanations. American officers couldn't understand it. The Air Defense Coordinator demanded answers. Why wasn't the aircraft detected? Radar operators checked equipment, convinced of malfunction. But all systems were working perfectly. They simply couldn't detect an aircraft flying that low. Fighter pilots were frustrated. They'd been on patrol the entire time, but watching for aircraft at medium and high altitudes where threats were expected. The E-2 crew reviewed recordings. Their radar had functioned normally, but the Buccaneer had been below radar horizon for most of its approach. When it briefly appeared at closer range, the return was buried in sea clutter and looked like another wave. The Buccaneer departed using the same low-altitude profile. Only when many miles clear did it climb to safer altitude for the return to Scotland. The crew had just executed one of the most impressive demonstrations in military aviation history. They'd shown that a 25-year-old aircraft using 1950s tactics could defeat 1,982's most advanced defenses. After Ocean Safari 83 concluded, there was extensive debriefing. Standard procedure, but this was especially important. The Americans wanted every detail. They weren't embarrassed. They were professional. Military exercises exist to identify weaknesses. Better to discover vulnerabilities in training than war. American officers approached this as a learning opportunity. The British pilots explained everything. Mission planning. How they analyzed defenses and identified gaps. Use of radar horizon and sea clutter. Radio and radar silence. Challenges of maintaining low altitude. How TFR was essential. Timing considerations. American officers took extensive notes. Asked detailed questions. Exact altitude used. Specific flight profile. Navigation without active radar. Visual cues. How they pinpointed the carrier's location. Every detail was valuable. This represented a serious gap in defensive capabilities needing urgent addressing. Lessons learned were significant. The US Navy recognized their doctrine had a major vulnerability. Too focused on high and medium altitude threats, seriously underestimating low altitude challenges. This led to important changes. Fighter patrol patterns adjusted to include dedicated low altitude coverage. Radar operators received additional training on detecting low altitude targets. New signal processing techniques developed to filter sea clutter while preserving aircraft returns. Overall defensive doctrine revised to assign higher priority to low altitude threats. War games began including more low altitude attack scenarios. This incident became a famous case study in military academies worldwide. Still taught today. It demonstrates several principles. First, never underestimate your opponent. The Americans had superior technology, resources, numbers, experience. Easy to assume defenses were impenetrable. But the British showed clever tactics and skilled execution could overcome technological advantages. Second, every defensive system has weaknesses. No defense is perfect. Always gaps, scenarios not fully considered. Constantly test defenses, identify weaknesses before enemies do. Third, training and skill matter enormously. The Buccaneer crews were highly experienced with years perfecting low-level techniques, understood their aircraft intimately, planned meticulously, executed flawlessly. The Buccaneer had distinguished service history, entered Royal Navy service in 1962, RAF adopted it in 1969. Throughout Cold War, Buccaneers practiced attacking Soviet vessels, even saw combat in the 1991 Gulf War, performing laser designation missions. Not a single Buccaneer lost to enemy action. Finally retired in 1994, after over 3 decades. Many pilots called it the best aircraft they ever flew. Today, several are preserved in UK museums. Would tactics like this work today? Complicated answer. Modern radar has improved tremendously. Phased array radars have better sensitivity. Look-down, shoot-down radars are standard. Satellites provide surveillance. Drones maintain watch. Electronic warfare systems detect weak emissions. However, fundamental physics haven't changed. Radar horizon is still a limitation. Sea clutter remains problematic. Flying very low is still one of the most effective ways to reduce radar signature. That's why military forces worldwide still practice low-level flying. Modern combat aircraft like F-15E, Tornado, and Rafale are capable of low-level missions. Modern anti-ship missiles use sea-skimming profiles, flying just 20 to 30 feet above water. The principles demonstrated by the Buccaneer are now built into weapons systems. The Buccaneer run of May 4, 1983, remains one of the most discussed incidents in military aviation. It proved innovation isn't always about newest technology. Sometimes it's about understanding technology's limitations, using what you have most effectively. The right aircraft, thorough planning, highly skilled crews, boldness to execute difficult missions. That combination made it legendary. If you found this fascinating, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It really motivates us to bring you more amazing content. Thank you very much.